Hi, everybody. David Noor. I want to welcome you to this month's webinar. Thank you for your patience. I am in an airport. If you see people walking behind me, if you can hopefully hear me live, I'm excited to share this month's content with you. We're live on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, X, and my goal in this session is really share best practices, to really share insights in um, this idea of, and I keep seeing people do this, which is confuse the size of their network. I know a lot of people with really the value they create in talk about uh, the relationship you're missing in your misperception try this again. Uh, Again, the misperception of the size of your relationships, the size of your contacts with the value that you're not seeing in these contacts. So the goal of, let's see, I'm going to try to share my screen as well. And the goal of, there we go. I think we're getting there. Yeah, we're slowly getting there. So thanks for the patience. So the relationship value you're not seeing, your network isn't about its quantity. It's all about the value exchanges. It's all about the perception, the reception, and really the impact you create from your relationships. So you look at all of our LinkedIn connections. You look at on my phone, the number of contacts on even our own Avneer Vault. The number of contacts, almost 70,000 that I've just kind of added here. I think most of us don't have a network problem. I think we fundamentally, believe that my network is strong because I know a lot of people. The real question should be, what is that network actually worth? Uh, During a pandemic, right? If you didn't have someone's cell number, you realistically weren't going to get in touch with them because, as you remember, people were not going into the office, and barrage of emails continue to be out of control. But the quality of your relationship in many ways depended on whether you were on a text-based exchange or interaction with that relationship. So it's not the size or the activity, but the value of the relationship that matters. And I want to change your mindset today in that thinking process. So the core misperception, as you can see, is that we're measuring the wrong things. So a lot of individuals, a lot of firms track number of contacts. How many did you upload in our CRM this week? Number of meetings. Hey, you're not having enough meetings. Now, don't misconstrue my comment. You have to do the right things to get to the results you're after. But number of events is not measuring the relationship strength. Number of meetings is not measuring the relevance of those relationships, and the number of contacts. It's not really highlighting any value exchange. So activity may be very visible, but the value is not. And that's what a lot of people kind of confuse in the process. So the real constraint is not that you're not relationship poor, you're relationship value blind. And I think that's true for most of us. The issue isn't the lack of relationships, it's the inability to see their value, really access their potential, really prioritize their importance, because not all relationships are created equal. So you cannot optimize what you cannot quantify. It's real. I learned years ago in engineering school, it is really difficult to improve something you don't measure. And most people don't have their finger on the pulse of their relationship health, depth, and relevance. And it's really difficult to improve on that if you don't get a baseline of where you are today. And that's a lot of what we're going to talk about is where are the constraints? Where are the bottlenecks in your relationships? So relationship value gets lost in really three silent failure points, right? One, missing relationship knowledge. If you don't have insights into that individual's, and I'm going to talk more about this in a minute, their priorities, the pressures they're under, what is it that they value, you're going to have a really hard time aligning, number two, the value exchange. If you don't know what somebody values, you're throwing stuff up on a wall to see what sticks. And that's just a wasted cycles in kind of what they need and the value they're going to perceive in working with you. Which leads to number three, you're also investing time, effort, resources, time. I'm going to talk again more about this in a second, being your biggest enemy on the wrong relationships, not the wrong people, good intentions, wrong relationships, irrelevant relationships, not prioritized, or they don't see you of equal value. The problem is, the challenge is, a lot of these things don't show up in your CRM, but they do show up in your results. So I often coach, if you've heard me speak, if you've been in one of my sessions, I often talk a lot about don't confuse vibration with forward motion. You're spending a lot of time, effort, activity, resources on people. How's that working out? Or is it really moving you forward towards your goals, the outcomes you're after from a lot of these relationships? Again, as a reminder, we're talking about the value you're not seeing in your contacts, in your relationships. And we are live on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on YouTube, on X. I would encourage you to jump in with your comments, with your questions as I go through the session and anything that may really stand out for you. So in the relationship economics book, I wrote about this idea of a relationship currency exchange. And you have to start seeing relationships as an economic system. It is fundamentally the enabler of the favor economy. And every relationship really operates on a very simple formula. The deposits, the investments you make, the value you create for others, and the withdrawals, right? Your asks, your value you request, whether it's a meeting or an introduction, or can someone set aside their own priorities to do something for you, those are all withdrawals. And the balance determines, I would submit to you, the relationship viability. Is this relationship viable? Is this relationship proactive? Is this relationship top of mind? Is this relationship, you know, they see value, they prioritize you. Friends don't ghost friends. And if people you're trying to work with, if people you're trying to help have joined the witness protection program and they're nowhere to be found, it's really difficult to work with these people. The imbalance, conversely, creates relational fragility. Your relationship is highly fragile if all you're doing is you're asking for help, if you're asking for favors, if you're asking other people for things, and you're not investing, you're not depositing enough in these relationships. So again, in the book, in my training, in my coaching, I talk about this intelligent relationship management process where on the right hand side, you start with the end in mind. Pivotal context are all about who do you need. Relationship bank is all about who do you know. And the entire process is predicated on these deposits, these investments you're willing to make, you're able to make. And these deposits, these investments are not you checking in. So what real relationships are not is you quote unquote staying in touch, or you generic outreach. Hey, I just wanted to call and say hello. Okay, great. Then what? You said hello. What have you been up to? What's going on with you? This isn't some buddy you're trying to go play poker with or go to a sporting event. This is ideally a strategic relationship, a valuable relationship. I'm not taking anything away from friendships and sporting events. That's not it. When we're talking about deposits, what there are unique insights. I read this and it made me think of you. I've been working on this and I thought of you. It's valuable access. Let me introduce you to someone. I met someone that I thought would be really valuable to you. It's warm, credible, relevant introductions, right? It's ensuring that you accelerate other people reaching their goals. So they have to be meaningful to the recipient, not just convenient for you, not just frictionless for you. Oh, that was easy. I just tossed that over the wall. And it was thoughtless at best, annoying, and of little value at worst. And that's what a lot of people are doing is there's a disconnect between what you think is valuable and what the recipient believes is valuable. If nobody else says this to you, you need to hear this. More of your relationships, most of your relationships don't need more information. They're drowning in information. You know what they need? They need insights. They need problem solved. They need things taken off their plates, not added to their plates. So now the next one is your relationship bank. It's people you already know. So if you're going to make withdrawals, right, most professionals ask way too early. I am on a call. I kid you not. You really cannot make this stuff up. Yesterday, with a senior executive who's in transition, he keeps talking about strategic relationship roles where he can add great value. Painful to talk to. I felt like I'm dragging a conversation out of this guy and I'm trying to help him. And by the way, our first difficult to reach, difficult to schedule an introductory visit with because he's in transition. And yet in our first meeting, he's asking me to introduce him to relationships I've built 20 years to develop. I came this close to saying, are you kidding me? I don't know you, not sure I like you. I sure as hell don't trust you. And you want me to walk you into relationships, senior executive relationships I've spent decades building? What are you smoking? So if you ask for a meeting, if you're requesting an introduction, if you're pursuing opportunities, it better be earned, because way too many people ask for that withdrawal before they ever invest. Without sufficient deposits, withdrawals create friction. I have little interest in interacting with this executive from yesterday again. It dilutes trust. It screams. People who do this scream, you don't get it. You don't understand that relationships are about investments. You don't understand that relationships are a favor economy. And I'm not trying to teach you to keep score or tit for tat, but it screams amateur hour or you're socially inept, you're relationally inept if you ask someone you just met for an introduction without investing in them, without adding value to their lives. It also lowers the responsiveness or prioritization. Last 3 times we've interacted, you've asked for something without making any investment in our relationship. What makes me want to schedule the next meeting with you? This is the tough love that we need to share with more people who ask for things they haven't earned to do so. They haven't earned the right to do so. So start by making deposits, start by making investments in relationships that are important to you. And none of us can make all these investments blindly. But if you prioritize people who are critical to your success and really focus on fewer, but building deeper, more meaningful, more impactful relationships, this idea of investments and deposits and withdrawals becomes a heck of a lot easier. None of us, those are who are married or have a significant other. We didn't propose to our significant other on the first date. So what makes you think it's appropriate or relationally mature enough to ask for introductions or a meeting in that first conversation? Instead, understand my pressures, my priorities, and what I value, and focus on addressing those. You do that, and now you have my attention. You do that, and now you become a priority in my world. You don't do that, and it's going to be a very short-lived conversation. So look at the misalignment in practice. The hidden disconnect, as I said, you believe you're adding value. The recipient doesn't because it wasn't timely. You replied to something I needed 6 months ago, or I needed a year. Where the hell were you a year ago when I needed that help? So if it's not timely, the value of it, we actually are in the platform working on a mathematical model and a data model, and as such, an AI model from Magellan to calculate that window and the diminishing value of the investment you make as that window closes. If your value add is not relevant, people toss introductions over the wall all the time. It is not relevant. You're wasting my time. And my time is what I have the least of. And if it wasn't differentiated, if it's generic, I kid you not, I get an email in 2026. I get an email, dear Damon. I replied back to the person who sent it. Who's Damon? Oops, sorry. You know what that screamed? Cut and paste. You know what that screamed? I'm clearly not a priority to this person, right? That they want to do. Again, we're all human. We're all fallible. Don't misconstrue my comment. I'm advocating that if the relationship's important enough, make sure your value add is differentiated enough. Because the perceived value, bottom of the page, a lot of times may not equate to the intended value. The best way I know how to avoid this is ask better questions. Ask better questions from people you meet with, people that are important to you. This morning at breakfast with an executive I genuinely like, I like working with, I genuinely like him as a person. Tell me how I can help you. Tell me how I can support you. Tell me what you're struggling with. Forget about me and what I do for a second. Tell me how I can be of value to you. I'm amazed of how many people don't ask that question and just toss introductions over the wall. So again, in the book, I wrote about this value pyramid, which is all our relationships are created at different levels. And what I want you to really think about is this idea of a multiplier effect. I think intuitively this will make sense to you. And again, in the platform, we're trying to quantify, in the Avenir platform, we're trying to quantify and agentically identify relationships that amplify your value. And it's just the premise is not all relationships are equal. Multipliers expand your reach. Multipliers accelerate trust. Multipliers create access to new networks, right? I'm spending a lot of time between Atlanta and the Bay Area. And as I transitioned a lot of our work and relationship to the Bay Area. I've certainly been there. I've spent a lot of time there, but my network there isn't as strong as it is in Atlanta. So I'm practicing I'm eating some of my own cooking, which is how do I leverage the relationships I have? Rob Sponson at Zions Bank, Andy Grosso at Forto Search, Mike Morale at Riviera Partners. How do I leverage those relationships to create net new opportunities, net new introductions to others? And by the way, I can't ask them for these favors if I don't invest in them and their success, right? So really important to narrow. This is why I coach people of everybody you know. Focus, narrow this down, because one multiplier relationship often outperforms dozens of passive contacts. Said another way, it doesn't matter how many people you know. It unequivocally matters how many people prioritize you or these multipliers in your world. So I'd rather have, going back to the value pyramid on the left, I'd rather you focus on fewer people further up the pyramid than a whole lot of people at the base of it. Because a lot of those people that are situationed, they come, they go, but they're passive contacts. LinkedIn doesn't show us this. Salesforce doesn't show us this. All the conversational intelligence tools that are out there don't show us this. Who are your multipliers? Who are your relationship multipliers? And the opportunity cost, and this is where a lot of professionals get it wrong. You invest time on the left-hand side, comfortable relationships, familiar contacts. Who doesn't like to hang out with people who like us and want to meet us for coffee and want to meet us for lunch, and they're nice to us? We all do. But they're low impact connections, again on the left, instead of high influence relationships, strategic multipliers, growth accelerators. People on the right dramatically, profoundly will elevate where you are. They will elevate your ability to reach your goals. So you can keep hanging out with people on the left, but as I do deal reviews, as I sit on quarterly business reviews, as I coach people, I'm asking questions about the people on the right. Tell me about 3 high influence relationships you invested in this past week. Tell me 2 strategic relationship multipliers you've had a meal with this past month. If you can't identify these people, again, you're confusing vibration, you're confusing busy work with really forward motion, with momentum, with am I moving the needle in key areas of what I'm trying to do. Talking about busyness, I'm sure you've seen this, right? Have you seen people on the right-hand side where they're always busy and their calendar is really amplifying kind of all that they got going on, right? So busy isn't valuable. Busy isn't, you can be highly engaged, you can be constantly networking, you can always follow up, but what you're not doing is you're generating minimal relationship value. You're filling the contacts, you're checking boxes, you're creating activity, but not really creating, right, the right relationship investments. So busyness masks poor prioritization. Busyness masks, are you intelligently, intentionally, we're going to talk more about that in a second, investing in the right relationships along the way. So a really good way to think about this is diagnosing your value. Ask yourself, which relationships create real opportunity? Go back and look at your goals. And again, the epicenter of the Avnia platform we're very focused on is proactive goal performance. Which relationships create real opportunities for you? Which relationships are stagnant? And not the fact that they're just stagnant. Why? Why are they stagnant? How can you get them off the dime? And where's the value being exchanged? And where is it not? Because if that value isn't exchanged consistently, isn't exchanged intentionally, isn't exchanged strategically, what happens is, like I said, they're going to stop returning calls and emails. They're going to stop prioritizing you. They're going to stop engaging in any kind of meaningful way. And this happens to all of us. If you don't know this, it is problematic. If you don't know this, it's a blind spot. It's a huge blind spot in your efforts. So mapping relationship value and evaluating your top relationships, for each of your top relationships, you should be asking, what value have I deposited? Effort, support, expertise, resources, introductions, insights, foresights. How am I investing in these relationships? What value have I withdrawn? Benefits, resources, access, information, or insights from them? And then is that leading to value that exists but is not realized? Future growth opportunities. This is rarely done systematically or consistently. As again, I talk to people, as I coach people, as I'm asking these questions, they don't have answers, or they don't have good enough answers in evaluating for each of their top contacts these fairly or seemingly straightforward questions. So the hidden relationship assets, the value that is hiding in plain sight, are dormant relationships. I again, a pro tip for you: every month, every at least a couple months, I go back in my calendar, I go back to emails, and I look at, who did I meet, who did I engage, who did I have that really good meeting with, that life and busyness and competing priorities get in the way, and we don't get a chance to follow up with. So those are dormant relationships. Under leveraged connections, many of us have them, we just don't leverage them in a meaningful way. And then unrecognized multipliers. So it goes back to, I think people have this shotgun approach, or this, let me cast as wide of a net as possible approach, versus the very focused, the sniper, the very surgical. I'm gonna pick that this week. I'm really gonna focus on 3 to 5 relationships as my top contacts, and ensure, again, I understand their priorities, their pressures, their value, and I'm gonna invest in those, because these 3 relationship buckets are unrealized economic potential. They're unrealized revenues, they're unrealized opportunities, they're unrealized ways for you to accelerate getting to your goals. The value gap, where the relationships break down: low deposits, few deposits, high withdrawals. You're asking a lot more often than you're investing. You're asking a lot more often than you're giving. There's no intentional cadence. We call it touch cadence. At a minimum, is it a once a week, once a month, once a quarter, twice a month? Should you be touching base with your more valuable relationships? And it's not, again, it's not just, hey, it's really, I read this, I saw this, it made me think of you. I'm going to be in your town. I would love to meet you and reconnect and get caught up on both sides. And if they're not strategically aligned, that's where your relationship growth stalls. That's where your relationships, again, a lot of contacts, but are you really moving them forward in any kind of meaningful way? So how do you become relationship rich? I'm often asked, how do I get better at this? It's not about more contacts. This is not about LinkedIn Sales Navigator or Zoom Info or Apollo feeding you another 100 names. It might as well be the old telephone book white pages. It's all about more relevant relationships, stronger value exchange, higher level of intentionality and consistency. And I have to tell you, the relationship rich professionals and their teams that I've met over 2 decades are intentional, are fundamentally intentional about the relationships they choose to invest in. Let me say it again. The relationship rich professionals and teams that I've met, that I've worked with over the years, this is now going on 2.5 decades, are very intentional about the relationships they choose to invest in. So if you want a way to prioritize those contacts, focus where value compounds. I like to prioritize relationships based on their influence, based on their alignment, based on their growth potential, based on the multiplier effect. And again, not just people that are familiar, not just people that are convenient, because that might take a low effort or that might be an easy pick fruit, but it's not going to create the growth. It's not going to create the upside. It's not going to create the value that you're after. Look at the top half of this page versus the bottom. Look at your goals. Look at individuals that are relevant to that goal. Again, we're trying to amplify this in the platform. And really, from that audit, from that prioritization, you ideally build a value exchange before engaging. I said this earlier. Ask what matters to them right now. That's their priorities. What matters to them right now should help you identify their priorities. How can I be uniquely helpful? That is relieving the pressure valve that they're under. How do I become uniquely valuable? And what insight or access can I provide? What is it that they would value? So you've got to design the value. Don't assume it. When you assume it, you're tossing things over the wall. When you design it, you're much more intentional. You're much more unique in your approach. And that's what's going to set you apart from your competitive peers. So the relationship investments that you make, what I've found over the years, compound. Again, each meaningful interaction on the left-hand side builds trust. Hey, Noor gets me. Noor sees value in what I bring. It creates relevance. It creates reciprocity. People feel obligated. You add value, they'll feel obligated to help you in return. And over time, this creates access. People pick up your call. People return your call. People prioritize returning your call. It creates stronger positioning. So your name, your brand, your company's brand gets elevated. And it leads to higher conversations. It leads to, in the next month, we're going to talk about deals that are won before the RFP comes out. You have those higher conversations, higher value added conversations now, all of which then leads to, again, your proactive goal performance. If you don't do this, what happens is relationships decay. If you don't add value, relationships absolutely erode. So if you don't deposit, you create disengagement. If you're irrelevant, you become indifferent. You're another one of those 300 emails an executive gets every day. If you don't have an consistent touch cadence, you become forgettable. So you have to understand, bottom of the page, either relationships compound or they decay. And I've often coached people that in every interaction, you have two options and two options only. You're either going to elevate or amplify that relationship, or you're going to dilute it. The choice is yours. And that value exchange either compounds the relationship or it's going to decay it. You've heard me talk about this. I believe that pitch, that field is our market, and 90% of the game is played when you don't have the ball. So most of us, a lot of people focus on the org chart on the right, and that's important because it's titles and boxes and reporting lines. But I would submit that the influence chart on the left, profoundly more valuable because it's built on trust and expertise and relationships and credibility and those trusted operators that perform very consistently. and those experts that are shaping the ideas in your client relationships. So this is fundamentally about a mindset shift. If you believe in this idea of the favor economy, if you believe this notion of a relationship deposit versus a withdrawal, you got to shift your thinking from your network size to relationship value. Stop asking how many people do I or we know. It doesn't matter. What matters, you start asking what real, what material value are we creating and where? Because if we do that consistently, if we do that intentionally, you'll see unbelievable results. And when I talk about multipliers, and when I talk about those relationship investments compounding, the dividends from those investments become unbelievable in terms of access, in terms of opportunities, in terms of you moving key ideas forward. So the strategic advantage to people who do this is you win more deals, you shorten the sales cycle, you differentiate beyond your capabilities, and because you're relevant, you're needed before you're thought of, you're contacted before the need. So your network is not your asset. It really is your ability to create and exchange unique value that sets you apart. That's what turns relationships into intelligent and profitable growth. Not growth at any expense, not growth at any cost, not growth at whatever it takes, but intelligent and profitable growth. So what I want you to do is really think about how to become relationship rich. Audit your relationships, prioritize your time, really redesign your value exchange so you go from just being well connected to being strategically valuable to people, to relationships that matter. So we're trying to do this. Again, I've been teaching these ideas for decades. We're trying to do this in the Avneer platform. I am so incredibly proud of the team because we also just launched for our early access and design partner customers a mobile app that's native iOS. Android is coming in a couple weeks. What's next? We'll follow up with a link to a relationship assessment. If you haven't taken this, it's a really interesting way to understand where you are with some of these concepts. I hope you'll go to avneerinsights.com. We're now accepting the next cohort of 20 early access, or what we call design partners, where you get early access to the platform, and we work collaboratively to really move the needle forward on your relationship investments. Our next webinar, I hope not to be in an airport, Tuesday, June 9th at 1 p.m. Eastern. I'm going to talk about deals that are decided before the RFP. And by the way, as a bonus, I'm hosting Mark Roberge, who was the first CRO, the founding CRO at HubSpot, and he teaches at Harvard. I've heard him speak several times. On June 1st at 4 p.m. Eastern, he's got a brand new book out called The Science of Scaling. We've read it. Our team has started incorporating it into the rhythm of our business, and I think you're going to find that particularly valuable. So I hope you'll mark your calendar to join us for that. On behalf of our team, thank you for being here. Again, I apologize if you heard the background noise or if the audio or the connection wasn't as good as I'd hoped. I'm in the airport on my way to spend some time with a client, and I just want to thank you for making the time to be here. Again, I'm on LinkedIn. If you don't follow me there, I share daily tips. We do these webinars once a month. avneerinsights.com is a really good website to learn more about what we're doing, and I hope to see you in our next session. Thanks, everybody. Make it a great rest of your day. All the best. Bye-bye.